Well, welcome to the Dream Labs at Dr. Contrast Live. Boy, what an absolute nightmare that was to try to get things on board here. So I thank you for your patience here. And Chip, good to have you on board. You got the popcorn? Hey, very cool. Save some for me, Chip. That's really a good little system to work with there. So I hope you're having a great day, Chip, and thanks for joining me in Pelican. Thank you for the following here. Hope you're on board as well. And by the way, if you could identify yourself, who are you and where are you from? And again, thank you for streaming in here and joining the forces. So thank you so much. I want to go back here for a moment and just review some things we did last Thursday. Very interesting set of circumstances. I think throughout the course of the week last week, I had a lot of questions about this whole concept of how to develop a sketch and how to begin to build a system of creative thinking and so forth. Not that I'm an expert at it. I'm still learning like you are. But I think one of the things I really want to focus in on last week, and I want to pick up a little bit of review here today, was this whole concept of the first program last Thursday was the personality of form. And what that really was, hey, how you doing there, Shadow? Good to have you on board there, Doctor. And thanks for all your help getting this so-called Twitch bear all lined up. Very, really helpful. But back to the concept about this whole idea, I think there's a triad going on line weight and just basic thinking for sketch rendering skills. Over the years, I've worked with a very simple triad that has really been extremely useful. And not that I use it all the time, but I think it's a very, very, very good set of circumstances to work with for putting together an idea of a sketch. And all set there. It's really interesting to see it all unfold. And I've always stated over the years that the first estate of being creative or being lucid with what we see in our mind's eye to create on paper is a system called form. Form's a very different approach to it. It's not form, for example, like a shape or a system, but it's a system of thinking. It's a very subtle, very soft approach to develop with the side of the pencil. I'll show you in a few moments in review form what that looks like. Then we're going to take that whole process. So the first estate is form. So that's the foundation. That's almost like a building process. And if you look at form from the point of view of developing a sketch, it's almost like sculpting a shape and coming out of nowhere. So it's internal in a sense. Internal in the fact that it comes inside the paper. You're slowly building it as you go. And I think it's a great measure against making mistakes, because what it does is it allows you to be very soft and manipulative, and at the same time begin to make adjustments and changes without destroying the overall intent of what you see. So that's what we're after here today. That was a review from last Thursday about what the personality of form was. And I'm going to go back, as I said here, and do a couple of sketches to show you what that might look like. Then we're going to turn it around into the second phase when you combine, for example, what takes place with form, then you add a certain thing, the personality of position, totally different set of circumstances. The hand articulation changes, which you'll see. You'll see the thrust change from being very soft and supple, which is form, to a very sharp and decisive approach to being sharp line and almost a power of line in the position. And then bring those two together, it really begins to result in a very solid, what I refer to in the long run of things, it's almost like putting together a prototype for a sketch rendering program with multimedia. And you'll see that unfold throughout the course of the lesson. So I think the best way to describe this program today would be simply this. It's about a little bit of a continuation of a teaching process that I think was long overdue in terms of addressing, pardon me, some questions that came up over the course of the last few weeks about putting together sketches and how they begin to originate and what the development process is. So, Chip, you still with us? How you doing there, man? The popcorn good? So hopefully I haven't saved some here. It'd be kind of nice to take a part of that into play. So let's go back and look at this thing into phase one. I'm just doing a couple of sketches here for review purposes on what this whole concept of what form begins to look like. And while I'm at it here, excuse me, I just want to line up some of these pieces that we're working with. Get kinds of rolling in. There we are. So let's go back and look at what form does here. Now, first of all, I'm going to work with just some basic geometric solids to get started here. So just to show you what form begins to look like. So we're going to stay down, for example, we said last week in that program on Thursday, we're going to bring that pencil down on the paper itself and use the full weight of that lead right there. The whole, right at the point, which is this, we're going to use that, hold the pencil like so. So we actually come back in. Yeah, the popcorn needs more butter. Boy, you got to blame the cats. They lick it off. So come back in and we'll just develop a very soft surface here. We're just going to go in there and just kind of model it in. Go through some line weights here, just very softly, just touching the paper, etc. Come back in and just model through that. That's basically it. Now we come back in and add a little bit of weight. Now come back in again. A little bit of weight. Now let's come back into the core. Notice how I changed my position here to kind of bring that up to speed. Just really come up and inside that whole process. Come back in, now begin to feather out of it, and then come right back up the light source. And then that's where light source is right back here. I'm gonna come back in and begin to put a little bit of, and I'll show you a little trick here. really down below here, you'll see a real thin line right in through here. That represents almost like a white surface, and it's there for a purpose. That purpose is to pick up reflected light underneath the volume of the cylinder itself. So when you go back to that, you begin to really play that whole idea. Notice I'm going to change the line weights here, but just by lifting my hands, you get much of that in place, come back up into highlight, and then let it go at that. And there it is, a little more color through here, and back into shadow. So that tells me where my light source is. Come back in, really kind of focus in on that, get that roundness part out front here. There we are. And again, just a little more toning. Now, if that's a flat surface out front, what I'm going to do with that is very simply this. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Once I have the volume in place, by forming it, keeping it nice and lucid and very light without a lot of sharp distinction on it yet, now that I've got a surface here that I want to go, if it's flat, here's the trick. I'm going to go back in and create, for example, what that looks like. This is the face of a cube, correct? That's where I always went back to that. Now I'm going to take that rendering, if this is a flat surface, I'm going to take the tone of this back to my vanishing point. Not vertically, not at an angle, but right back to my vanishing point. So I'm going to come back in, reinforce that circle that starts the cylinder, reinforce it there, and come right back and tone it again. Back into where that horizon line is and the vanishing point on the horizon line. There they are. That's how I'm going to blend those two together. Right back in the direction of the vanishing point. Again, notice, look at the difference in getting that surface to read there. Again, a little bit of reflected light down below, the casting of a shadow out here. And then there it is. That's the form we're looking at. Look how simple that is. And it gets the job done, hopefully, from the point of view of being extremely complete unto itself. Just round this out just a bit more. There it is. A bit more shadow. So that's what I refer to as, again, this is what form looks like. It's very soft, very supple. Doesn't have a lot of definition. You're just kind of sculpting a shape as you go through it all. So now let's go to a zero reference. Let's go back to this one right here. Let's see what happens here. Now the trick with that, we're going to develop a sphere here. Now the trick to that one is you don't have a reference to work with, no edges to break it. Just really without a handle. Yeah, that's right. Chip, looks fuzzy, need glasses. Nope, you're good, Chip, you don't need glasses. That's the whole idea of what form should look like. Extremely fuzzy, so bear with me. We're going to kind of build on this as we go through the entire process. Now the second one, let's go back into zero reference, developing a sphere. The trick to that one is put a direction on there where that light source is coming from, in this case from the upper right. Now turn that paper, and at 90 degrees to that light source, come back in and begin to just tone this thing slightly. There it is, and release it. Now come back into the crescent and begin to rotate out of it and indicate where that light source is coming from. Just a little bit of a dab up on top there. Now come back in. Now creating that same light source, come out here. Again, a little bit of reflected light, shadow. I mean, look how distinctively soft that is, but at the same time, begins to illustrate, for example, what that sphere is doing. So, pardon me for a moment. Now, if you want to come back and reinforce that a little bit more, but one more way to do it, that's fine. Always remember the crescent, a lot rounder. If you go flat on this, it's not a flat surface to begin with. It's a very round surface, so that whole shadow or that whole highlight system or rendering format is going to come back and really take the shape of that sphere itself. And again, notice the axis helped me there was that the direction of light. Worked right against it, released it, and then right into the light source, and then begin to go back to the crescent and create that shape. So there we are, gang. Making sense so far? We just got to stop from here. Chip, what do you think? Still pretty fuzzy, but nonetheless, that's what it takes. Let's go kind of put that second in. Now, let's go more to a linear system. In a linear system, let's go back and let's recreate this thing. It's going to bring a little rectangular form here. I'm going to begin to draw this guy. Lock it in. Lock it in. Now there it is, just basic rectangular form. Now, just still fuzzy though. It is. So let's look at this guy. Let's say the light source is coming from over here. Let's say we're coming in from the left-hand side now. Very interesting. Now I'm going to come right back to this leading edge. I'm going to hit that thing with an edge, a little bit of highlight, then come right back in and tone this away. Dark to reflected light. Notice I'm not going to fill it all in. I'm going to let that fade right back to reflected light. There it is, and then release it. Now, this one, this surface here, light, right back to reflected light. Reinforce where the highlight is, or that definition break is. And again, look at that. As simple as that is, look what begins to happen in that shape. You begin to realize where the light source is coming from and where the turning point is, and that little highlight right there is much the same as this and this. That's a little bit of reflected light or direct light, so it tells us how to turn those corners. I see the shapes, but it doesn't look out of focus. But it should be out of focus, Chip, because we're trying to develop, or as I said before, a form system that begins to telegraph the story. We're putting together a rendering, so to speak, or a prototype for a rendering, but being very, very subtle with it and extremely fuzzy, to use her term. But it really want to make sure that we can just kind of softly put it all together, and then we're going to add some detail to it. You'll see how that comes together in just a few moments here. So again, there's another example of, again, getting into a rectangular form where we actually have that taking place. Again, that same softness, light source, light to dark, and then again, dark to light, away from the light source. So notice, the reason that's light and that's not filled in, for example, is because you're getting a lot of reflected light back into the other side of the surface here. So that's what that does. Now let's go back and just do another little study here. Come back in, create a cone. Now I come back in again. Get that center line. That's going to be critical. That center line is going to tell me how I'm going to run near the same. My light source, again, from the left. I'm going to come back and step inboard just a bit. Tone it towards center line. Then move out of it and create it. And come back in again. Leave a little bit more. And that same thing on this side as well. A little more tone. And let the volume sing right there. There it is. Draw through it again. More filling through here, a little more of that, and just a little bit of a hard edge line out here. And where that's coming together, draw through it again, and indicate where the light source is coming from. From out here, shadow. Again, a little bit of reflected light. Notice I picked my hand up just a bit to get this thing put together. And I come right back in and just tell me where that shadow is going to fall. That tells me everything I need to know about that surface. Again, right back into highlight. I can go back in again here. Put more tone in this thing. Kind of keep building it away from the light source. And then run it right back to center line. And put more core to it. And again, notice the impact over here of having just a little bit more reflected light right on that side. So that kind of gives me the shape or definition that I'm after right there. So look at the substance and the character, the personality of those four shapes being form related. Again, form's purpose is to create. It's not to finish, but to create. It gives you a substance to work with, for example. Now, let's go ahead and address this thing from the point of view of what happens now, for example. Once you've got this format down, where you're actually sculpting a shape, or you're beginning to develop a format for rendering, you can come back in and start to do some pretty interesting things with this whole process. I'll start with one process here, but I want to show you today what position does. So, just to be clear here, I want to make sure that we keep this pretty sanctified in terms of what form is. It's a very soft, supple approach to it. So if I go ahead and take that approach, let me do something here first. Let's start another series of sketches here. Now, when I work with position is an entirely different process where form relies on that side of pencil being down on the paper constantly and just building a shape and sculpting it. Now I can go back in and change the articulation from this in my hand to that position. Back to a more conventional drawing system or sketch rendering system. So it's going to look like this. I'm going to come back in now, back in the pencil, draw through it, a little crisper. Get the perspective to set up. Notice how gesturally this is becoming now. And let's get that form down. There it is, right there. Just got a basic little two-point perspective, maybe a computer tower of some sort. Now let's break into it. Now here's the beauty of what position does. What position's function is now is to draw attention to, or it clarifies what we're after. We'll go back to that in a moment with these form studies. Very interesting set of circumstances. Now look what begins to happen here. Now I'm going to start to take this whole process and begin to really sharpen this up. This is now position in essence. Look at this. Let it disappear. Let it disappear. Come back in and tone this into shadow. And again, closest to me. Put that manufactured highlight right across there. Take it across the top. Run this back in again. Thick to thin. Thick to thin. Again, right through here. And again, highlight across the top. No need to kind of underscore. Look at the power in that sketch. All of a sudden, the line weights begin to define the shape. You buying that, Chip? Shadow, you still there? You buying it? So here we go. That's the idea behind position. Position's job is to really clarify what we've created. Aha. Okay, making sense? Very cool. Makes sense. Good deal. Yeah, we're good. There it is. So let's go back in again and hit this thing through. Now, I can add a little bit of tone to this. I can go back underneath and use the same process. Dark. Well, the surfaces. The light. Again, back to form a little bit here. One on top of the other. Tone this in. Let it fade. Hit up the line weight. Add definition. Add a little bit more definition using the combination. Across the top, a little bit of highlight, back to form again. See, I'm combining both systems now. I'm developing both position, which is this, very hard line components, against some very soft, elegant pieces here. And I'll come back in and do this. And I can come back in there just enough to just get myself a little bit more of this, and then come back in and put a little bit of signature in the bottom of this guy. There's a combination sketch of what form does here. Look what this does. For example, that's form. And now look at that, form and position. Notice where the thrust is changed. Personality of position is to clarify or to clean up or to really bring into focus what we're seeing. Line weights help. Yeah, terrific. That's the whole process, Shadow. That does it. When you begin to put together a very soft form here or just a basic sketch writing format, there you are. That's got it. That's position's function. You can also isolate by doing this. You can go back in. Let me change the sketch here. All position is really interesting. Now, start lightly. Draw through it. Get that center line. Pardon me as I rotate the paper here. Get my center line to work. Come right back and create these circles. Open it up. Begin to sketch through it just a bit. And graft onto it. Now, let's look at that basic sketch. Now, if I strictly stay with position, it's really interesting. Do you ever start with soft forms like that? Yes, I always do. I always, honestly, Shadow, even from the sketch rendering, even in the marker and multimedia, always work with the light to dark, very soft surfaces to deal with. It's such a really, it's a magical process because what it helps us do. Let me backtrack for a moment and explain something here. When we use this system to begin to think with, if we start to employ what form really truly means, and that is to create something very softly and sculpting it instead of being hard lined with it, so to speak. How many times have we done a sketch, for example, where we actually, oh gee, all the line weights are all the same. It has no magic, it has no pageant, no passion, it's all very flat. That's the mission of what form does. This system will actually become a prototype for rendering. So when you start to build and sculpt the form, and you're also just seeing it unmerge, it just create itself off the paper, you've got a shell to work with. The reason it's significant is this: it's the absolute total beginning of a rendering pattern to lead you on a success. It's a step-by-step process to make sure you've got the form right, you've got the positioning right, and you've got the old content. Then we'll come to texture, for example, which is really this culmination of completion format. So that's what this does. So that's what form does. Then when you start to go hard line, and you combine that combination of dark against light and against this whole idea. Look how much paper we're working with here. The line weights are doing the job for us, but there's a little bit of form acting here too. So I'm keeping that surface nice and clean. Let's go back to this one. If I go to all form, let's see my light sources again from over here. No, over here. Let's say from the left-hand side. I'm going to come back in and really strike this thing up by doing the following. I'm going to come back in, closest to me. I'm going to take that circle and highlight it. And then highlight it. I'm going to come down below and highlight this. Everything closest to me, I'm going to power right up. That's what this is doing here. Notice, all those lines, these lines are closest to me, so I'm actually going to power them up and begin to give them real, strong, bold distinction. As it fades away, look, there's nothing back here, there's nothing back here. I just let that go. That gives me depth. Instantly gives me depth. Now come back in, closest to me, bring up the line weight, let it fade. Bring up the line weight, let it fade. Come back into this. Again, since this surface here tells me where my light source is, I'm going to come back in through here with the weight. And again with the weight. Show me over here. Nice and light. Draw through it again. Turn it upside down so that I know where my light source is. Again, weight to nothing. Now let's go back and add some definition. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and again, let's turn this upside down here. Reinforce, reinforce. Now, let's go back in there again. No more, no less. I can come back in and put a little bit of form in this. I can show you where the undercut is. And there's a good example of what a position sketch should look like. Now, does that read or not? Let me help you out here. Chip, what do you think? Chip and Pelican, if you're still there, great to have you on board. Any commentary at all so far here, gang? Coming along together nicely? Cool. Again, notice it. Just for personal review here, very important to know that form's job is to really curious how you chose the light source. Oh, the light source is just a matter of decision to go right or left, from the right-hand side, or the right-hand side or the left-hand side, above or below. That's your choice. Like the direction. Yeah, there you go. Curious how you choose it. Like the direction. Yeah, so that's basically it there, Shadow. We got that all set. I'm just going to put a little more zipper in this thing. That's a good example of a sketch that's purely all just pure position content, all line weight, very little tone down below here, so it's a good combination of one or the other. So let's see, Everlike head-on, right? No, I never really have gone a head-on light source, because what that does is it kind of flattens out the shape, shadow, and also you don't get to see where the definition is behind the shape or the form, or ground it by using a shadow. I imagine you might pick something different to pick on a piece or part of the design. Yeah, you could. There's a random direction. Makes sense. Yeah, I always like to go right or left because it gives me a shift in terms of where to place the emphasis. In this case, my light source is out here, so I have a lot of power. Closest to me, the circle, dark to light, dark to light, dark to light. Same with this process here. Light source out here. Again, coming back in with a lot of combination of just power lines to get that thing to work here. Let me just sharpen the stick here for a moment. Let's do one more. Let's go back and look at this. Just one more here. Draw through it. Very lightly. Notice where my hands are in the pencil. I'm still searching back here, but I'm going to come back in. Draw back in through here. Put a little bit of weight in this little apparatus here. Then take the viewer back inside the opening. There's a real quick, rapid thumbnail sketch. Again, very, very much position related. Now let's put the heat to it. Now, since I'm here, a lot of weight. Let it fade. A lot of weight, let it fade. Come back into this. And turn this thing upside down here for a moment here. Thank you. Come around with this, hit this guy. Take that right through. Again, a lot of weight. Thick to thin. Again, thick to thin. Look how the weights are starting to set up the sketch itself. I mean, there's almost everything's there. Now it's a simple matter of coming back in. Again, closest to me, a little more power with weight. Turn it upside down again, moving through the whole process. I'm constantly moving the paper for a reason. And that reason is to keep things nice and clean and succinct. Again, a little bit of a scallop shape down through here. It's kind of just turn upside down again. Back, better yet, let's just do this. Overpower that line. Bring it back in and let it fade. Indication of where the light source is coming from. Thick to thin. Let it fade. Let it all fade. Underneath, same thing. A little bit of tone here. A bit of highlight change, and then tone it underneath there. So we get that undercut. There it is. Look at that. Some together. So far, so good. There we are. Now the light source over here. I'm going to come back in and use just weight change to let you know where that's coming from. There it is there. A little bit of highlight, and again, indication here where the lens is sucked back in there. Let's go back and do this. Tone it in first. Catch a little bit of reflection over the top of it. add some definition in through here, and take the same approach and working right back to the light source again. Put that shadow or that edge in there. Just come right across. Again, a little bit of form to it. A little bit more form to it. Again, thick, dark. The reflected light. Again, dark. And especially underneath here. But this is a shadow surface underneath here. So it's a bit of a different scallop or a different surface. I'm going to beef that in. Come right back underneath this with a shadow. And again, pick up the same thing. Add a little bit of form to it. And there we are, coming right through the process. This might be a bit of a recess. So again, shadow here into that little disc. A little bit of romance outside the form itself. A little change of pace here. And again, a little corner there. Look how I'm moving the paper a lot just to kind of keep my hands and eyes at 9 degrees to the surface here. Just got to get that in place. And there it is. There's that another sketch. What do you think, gang? There's 3 examples right there of what happens when you begin to let this surface send or tell the story. That starts the whole process. Form it. Another way of saying that is create it first. Nice and easy. Random light direction. Yeah, well, maybe. No, it's not random, really. When you look at this here, Chip, let's go back to this guy. It's very random in the sense that they have the light sources out here. Again, back in through here, away from the light source, a little tone, a little darker. Again, dark to light toward the light source. Again, shadow inside that. One thing that might be missing, might be confusing, is this, just to kind of just tone this back just a bit more. So I know where that's coming from. There you are. How's that? That makes sense, Chip? No, can teach. I'm trying. Oh, let's see. Yeah, Chip. Seems so simple when someone no, that's not. That's very kind, Chip. But I think that's incumbent for everybody can do this. I mean, it's not a matter of. It's a matter of learning how to put together. And I'll say this hopefully with a lot of respect for everybody who's out there viewing. This is not magic. This is something that I really become. Yes, like I can do ballet. Yeah. What I'm trying to get across here is, from over the years, what I've learned is it's really the most difficult thing. I've asked a lot of questions in workshops and clinics, for example, how do you start a sketch? Or I'm asked, how do you start a sketch? Most people have the tendency to want to do this. They want to come back in and get that pencil up on there and just hardline the daylights out of this stuff. And all of a sudden they lose the magic of it all. Whereas from the teaching side, what I try to get across is, to me, why that triad is so golden is simply the triad, meaning form, position, and texture. That's a golden triangle. Because it's golden because, number one, the first instance, the first estate of form is to teach us how to see what we see very softly. Am I building the right process? Am I going in, for example, and working the magic of the forms are doing this? To understand form, that's another process. This idea of form will teach us how to develop form. Remember, it creates the 5 basic solids. And if you understand this language about the solids, anything else you add to it is nothing. I mean, it becomes surmountable. It's not impossible to deal with. Really interesting to work with. So let's go back and look at that. The other thing that's nice about this, I'll say this too, hopefully not boring you to death here, folks. What's great about this process of form, which is soft and very supple, and then all of a sudden, this, which is extremely harsh and brash, is simply this. True or not, opposites attract, correct? Opposites definitely attract, positive and negative. Ask Tesla. Nikolai, not the current Tesla, but nonetheless, interesting, isn't it? Opposites attract. So what do they attract? Opposites done well. Softness against harshness creates confidence. That's the difference. Confidence in knowing that you've got a process here that'll work with you every single time to create what I refer to as visual success. Now, does it mean it's going to be correct all the time? No, not really, but you can adjust to it. For example, it's just absolutely amazing how it all comes together. When you put those 2 pieces together, the softness of form and the harshness of position, its personality is very, very much in terms of to complete or to create and comply. This job of position is to clarify. What am I looking at? How do I see that? For example, let's go back to this guy for a moment. Let's just go back to this form piece for a second. Let me backtrack. Sorry for this, gang. I want to come back in and make some sense out of this cylinder, for example. Let's do this. I want to come back in and make changes to this thing. I can come back in and add to it. I've done this in client meetings all the time. I can come back in and change the format to this thing. Come right back in. Still work the same horizon line. Go back to VP. Still come back into that. Hit this whole thing nicely. I can come back in and add position to this. A bit more distinctive shadow. Look what that did. That makes sense? Look what happened there. I took the softness of the form and added onto it, and yet didn't destroy the integrity of the sketch. That makes sense? See how we sharpened that up there, Chip, in terms of, again, you keep it extremely lucid. Go right back in. For example, let's go back, let's do one more example here. I can go back to this guy. Still working with my light source, still honoring it. There it is, gang. What do you think? There's phase 2. Drawing is like a marriage. A mix of hardness and softness probably means something else. Yeah, there you go. What do you think, gang? Does that make sense now, Chip? Shadow, you still there? Super. There we go. So true. Yeah, I mean, look at the difference on this. The relationship is, and look at this is an example of, for example, of a good position sketch where it's all line weight. Oh, pardon me, it's going to get that in place here. Where this is all line weight, for example. There's not a lot of thrust or fill-in, for example. This is a little bit of combination of both position and some form, softness, and against the sharpness. Same thing again here. A combination again of some position. Let me move that up just a bit so we can kind of see what we're after here. Same process. This is where we are, for example, with this whole concept of coming back in with, again, very lightly sketching it into position. Notice how the hard lines are all exit. Notice every one of these situations, I'm really emphasizing the lines that are closest to me with a lot of impact, a lot of punch. And coming off the page. Yeah, they just really jump off the page at you. It's just interesting how it goes. And that's the impact. That's the confidence we're talking about, Chip. That you really look and it's just coming off the page in terms of being really solid. So it's a combination of, again, the power of position. Pardon me, put that in. The power of position being all line and very, very much in terms of to clarify what we see. Then the combination of form, which gives us a surface definition we're after as well. So again, notice how one relates to the other. This is all form and position. We started with the forms, just like, let's go back to this page for a moment here. Thank you for your patience with me here. That's how we started, very much forming it. Amazing how it all begins to function. Then we came back and said, all right, because we've gone to this little aspect of getting into position, what's really cool about this is now how they both work together in harmony to create the opposites, which attract. What do they attract? Confidence. That's what it comes down to. And I think it's a great battle plan for sketch rendering skills because it doesn't rely on us. Let me go back and review this one more time here. The reason this process is so magical and it should be utilized almost every time we see something in our minds that it created is because it takes the pressure off of trying to be perfect. what it does, it really begins to accentuate how really, what I'm referring to another word, how really critical it is to take it nice and easy and begin to see what you, to begin to imagine what you're seeing. Build it as you go softly. So powerful. As opposed to being, oh, geez, I wish I would put that line down. Oh, I'm sorry, that didn't work. It just takes all the pressure off of us. And I think that's the nice thing about it. It's a release. It's not intimidating. It's inspiring because you know if you make a mistake, you can adjust. Look what I did with this. Started with a cylinder and I added that to it. And you can't tell that cylinder's underneath there. It's because it's soft. It was manufactured. You can go with the flow. That's another way of saying it. There, you got it, Shadow. So let's carry on here. Sorry for the long run here, gang. So let's go back to this. Let's just take that into a very much more complicated set of circumstances. Let's see what happens here if we do this. Let me sharpen the stick up a little bit. Any questions so far? I'm making sense here. And again, Pelican, if you're still there, how you doing? I'd really like to get your feedback on this as well as we go here. Let's go back and look at this from another point of view, just strictly staying with the whole idea of being position related. Ready? Let's go back in and just create. Let's get this down. Ain't nothing there, right? It's just a good old-fashioned circle in perspective. There it is. Very interesting. I never knew you did this. You can go, yeah, there we go. There it is. Now let's come back in and add something here. Let's put this down. And you know where I'm going. Now, let's put some power to this thing. Here's another example of what position looks like. There it is. What do you think, gang? That makes sense? How it started with a circle in perspective. That's how that sketch started. Just a nice simple circle. Then all of a sudden you work right back into it. I can back in and power up some of the wheels a bit more. I can kind of bring that back to place. Bring that into place. I can come back and add a little bit of tone to it. If I want to put a little bit of shadow in this thing, I can add a little bit of some sort of very subtle approaches here. Very subtle approach there. Come back in and reinforce some of these pieces. Get that same thing about power and line weight. Come back in across it, just indicate where that backside wheel is going to be. Strengthen some of the shadow work around here. Again, same thing up front. A lot of power closest to me. And just let it fade away. And there it is. There's a very simple little sketch there, gang. There it is. It doesn't need rockets, but if it did, they would be shaded in. Yeah, but side mirrors. Fast circle. There it is with side mirrors. There you go. That's it right there, Chip. Very simple little process in terms of putting together. Notice it's all line weight related. But in the process of working with those lines, I'm really dealing with what is known as a cylindrical form, a conical form, elliptical form. I mean, all those surfaces are in there. I'm just using that whole process of beginning to develop the whole idea of forming it in my mind's eye, but I'm using position now to really clarify what I'm seeing. So let's go back and do one more here. Hope this is helping, gang. Everybody making sense? Is good? Let's see. It's just shadows. Doesn't need rockets, but yeah, no, it doesn't need a lot of surface work or shading here at all. Okay, it's just really solid approach to what I'm trying to get across in the stream is what the purpose and the personality of position is. Position's job is to clarify what we see. It's a line-based power of the line weight system that really needs no explanation. It's self-explanatory. So let's go back in. So I have another one here. Count this out, get a ground line down. 1, 2, 3, 4, back here in space. There we are. Let's put a bit of a bone line in this thing. Just gonna go, just a nice, simple, easy shape. A little bit of perspective to it. Put the upper in place. Bone line through it. And I could stop right there and call that a day. There it is. Look at that sketch starting to unfold there. Making sense, gang? What do you think? Another variation on what line weight will do, what position will do for us here. So let's kind of finish it off here. Far so good. There we are, coming together. All right. The line weight tells everything. There it is. It tells a story. You got it there, guy. Let's come back in and just kind of finish it out here as we go. Bring that up to speed. Switch pencils. Line weight. Oop, no mistake. That's fine. Let it work for you. There you go. That's cool. I'm back in on top here. And there it is. What do you think, gang? There she be. Ah, nice. I bet show 400. Show the 400. Hey, Captain Nemo, how are you, man? Good to see you. Sorry, I didn't look up to see your notice. Starship just flying a bit in my new 400. Oh, nice. Good for you, man. Very cool. Watching your stream on the side. Hey, excellent. Very good. Thank you so much. Wow. Yeah, this looks, again, see the difference now? Look where we started, for example. Let's go back and review here just for a moment. That's what we started with. For example, for Captain Nemo's band. Thank you so much for joining me, Captain. Good to have you. Always good to have you on board. Secondly, let's go back and look at this for a second. We started out here with the whole idea. Last week, we did a study on, for example, what form is like, what the nature of form, what's the personality of form. It's very soft. You build a shape. You're sculpting something as you go. Really interesting how it all comes together here. So that was the idea of last Thursday's stream. So today's a complement to that thing about form is simply going back in and saying, now the first state of form, you develop something, you imagineer, you build it out of the paper. Then the next step in the process is going into a process which I refer to as position. And position's function is very, very simple. That is the idea. Form's job is to create. Second thing, and we went together from that, was to add, for example, when it begins to go to position, which means to clarify. It cleans up what you're after. So you keep this the form stuff really soft and supple. Then you come back in on top of that with a really interesting definition of hard, sharp lines. For example, these lines closest to me being really powered up and putting together some real impact and boldness, adding a bit of form to it to kind of get the surfaces working. And again, notice what I didn't mention earlier here. Got to run, Doc. Kind of get out of this meeting. Hey, no problem, Chip. Thanks so much for joining forces. Hope you have a great day. Take care of yourself, and thanks for joining us, Chip. One thing I noticed too, for example, when we stress, is notice that all the surfaces being illustrated. For example, all things that are vertical, rendered vertically. All things that are horizontally, run horizontally. Makes a huge difference. So again, this is an example of a combination of both position and form, and this is a pure sketch in terms of what position might look like without a lot of fill into it, but it gives you an idea of what the dynamics of line are doing and how it begins to function. And then last but not least, we just finished this one up there, Captain Nemo. Just a nice couple of theme sketches on what position does as far as a line weight study is concerned. Look how simple that is and how it all comes together in terms of putting together both a line weight, closest to me, very powerful. As it fades, let it go away. Again, thick to thin, all the elements are there for position to clarify the shape itself. That's basically what we're after today, and I think that really kind of helps us to see why it's so critical to pay attention to what I refer to over the course of my career. It's this whole, whatever, again, for sharpening these pencils, the whole idea of being able to say to ourselves that we're going to honor what I refer to as a golden triangle of creativity. And that golden triangle of creativity embodies three different types of line. It's form, then it's position, and it's texture. What's coming next is texture, for example, how to change the tempo. Is it plastic? Is it lucid? Is it matte? Is it sculpted? Is it perforated? Whatever it might take place. But there's so much to it in terms of that. We just take a moment today and just show us some things about what the nature, the personality of both line studies we're dealing with today and last Thursday, what they look like, and put them into practice here. So again, this is all position based. This is all very strong and powerful approaches to what line weight can do. Notice in every case, all the lines that are closest to me are thick to thin. Thick to thin. I'm just letting it fade and create more of a dimension of space, or the third dimension. And being very lucid down here, for example, same process, very thick to thin. Very thick to thin. This is taking it back and giving it that whole process of thick to thin and light to dark gives us dimension. There's no need to outline the whole thing. It's very, very, very simple process to hold on to. It just takes all the fear out of being able to put down surfaces and put a lot of concept together with it. So anybody, any commentary here in closing at all? Captain Nemo, thank you so much for traveling along with us here. It's great. Flying a bit in your 400i. Very cool. Anybody, any comment at all before I wrap it up here and just kind of go through a quick review and get it started for next Thursday? Please feel free. I really appreciate your feedback, gang. It's great. Let's see. Good. Take care, Chip. Thanks, Doc. What's on? Let's see. What's on Thursday? We're going to go back and review some of this thing again too, Shadow. We take advantage of going a little further with this thing, do some more sketch writing, add some texture change to it, perhaps. Do maybe a couple of interior studies or some other product variations on the theme. But I really want to go back to it. This is more of a teaching element here, again, based on last week's Thursday stream, or part of that, about a week or two before we did last Thursday's stream. A lot of questions came up about how do you start a sketch? How do you build a sketch? What's involved in it? So I thought, well, let's go back and look at the basic triad here we're dealing with in today's subject matter, or last Thursday's subject matter, today's subject matter, and hopefully on Thursdays. And that, again, is form, position, and texture. And I think every now and then, to me, it's very refreshing to always have, I believe, a good substance in terms of a little bit of a teaching method. Now, I'm not a very good teacher, but I want to make sure we go back through it and begin to really stress and highlight some of the things we really deal with in terms of how to put together sketches. It's always good to go back and review something, especially for me. I've never lost sight of this. I've always worked with it day in and day out. It's an incredibly powerful tool to work with, and I'm grateful for the understanding, or the beginning of the understanding of how to work with it. So that's it. We're going to go back here again. Once again, we started with the form-based process and review here. Those of you may be tuning in late. This is all formula-based, and we started with just a basic cylinder here, and a basic sphere here, and a rectangular form and a conical form. So we went back after we finished this. We went to this page next, where we went back and just showed what position really is, what its personality is. Extremely, very, very clarifying. Hard edges closest to me. And then letting it all fade as it goes back into the page. And then went back after I finished this page, went back to this one and added that element to it and those elements to that cylinder. And we didn't destroy it, which again, is to me, the magic of understanding what form does. If you keep it soft and supple, you can make changes and corrections without going back and starting a whole new sketch. It's extremely efficient. Every time you work with it, it's extremely efficient. So I did the same thing with the sphere, add a little bit of form to it to give it some idea of definition. So we had to put form and position together. And then the last one we did was just all pure position line work, for example, what line work can do for you in simplifying the sketch without getting a lot of fuss, a lot of muddiness, a lot of color involved in it. It just clarifies and completes the process. So that's it for today, gang. Really appreciate it. And again, if you have a moment, thank you so much for paying attention. Shadow, Captain Nemo, and Chip, even though you're gone, thanks so much. And then Pelican, please let me know if you have a chance to. Please let me know what you did, how you felt about the process today. And let's build on some of this thing on Thursday. And I really appreciate my pleasure, Shadow. Thanks for tuning in. It's just fun to do. I'm learning as much as you are, hopefully, and putting this stuff together. It's never been a mystery. It's always been a mystery to me how it all begins to develop itself. I keep practicing it, and I think it's been a huge asset. So please take a moment and visit my website at drcontrast.com. There's a series of sketch rendering processes on there that might be interesting to you. Really interesting how to put it all together. Again, that's drcontrast.com. And I always really make this announcement too on every stream I carry. For example, if you have things you want me to work on, you have any questions about what the drawing process might be like, or I can help you, please feel free to drop me a line at my email address at jim@drcontrast.com. Really be very, very helpful. So thank you so much for the time invested here. Again, it's always an honor to be part of the process here. I'm glad we all the Twitch stuff lined up. We're still having a hard time getting this stuff exported up into YouTube, but that'll come in time. So they save these sessions for a while. So we've got time to put both the one on Thursday and then today's hopefully up on the system as soon as we get a chance to break through it. We've got all the elements in place. We're just not recognizing it yet. So thank you for your patience regarding that. And last but not least, I always make this commentary because it's, to me, the most important part of the day. Never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. All the best, gang. We'll see you Thursday at 2. Take care. Be a form master, position yourself, and get ready for the texture of life. Take care, gang. Thank you.